Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Dr. Ardis Show. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Ardis, and I hope you had a great week. I hope you're excited for this presentation. I know I am. So this is a very unique interview podcast, and I hope that you find a lot of value in this because someone I asked to read a book definitely found incredible value of reading the words on the pages of this book that was written in the early 1900s. And I'm very excited to share with you today what it is that I learned. This episode, I just want to remind you all, you can go to healingfortheages.com. Healing for the Ages Conference 2.0 is going to be the sponsor for this show. So go to healingfortheages.com and order your either virtual tickets or the replays by this point. If you need the replays, go get them. If you didn't actually participate and watch it live, you need to go get the replays. This is going to be an incredible amount of information that you and your loved ones will value and find benefit from for decades going forward. So we're very excited about that. All right. So in studio today is my daughter, Sierra. Now, Sierra has been on some radio shows with me. I think you've probably seen her face at the Healing for the Ages conference, the first one that we did. She was there participating. I had her up on stage for a few moments there. She's also done a few radio shows with me. But this, I think, is the first podcast show where her and I just did a singular interview to discuss a topic that I believed she would be very passionate about. And I think many in our audience are going to be passionate about. And any parents out there, if you have something you've learned, read, you go share it with somebody else, particularly your own children. When they take that, read it, and find value in it too. It's very exciting to see that you guys can share something in common. And this is no different. All right. So what we're going to be discussing today is a book, and the book is titled Outwitting the Devil. Outwitting the Devil was written by an author named Napoleon Hill. And for any of you who read or have heard of the book Think and Grow Rich, which is an entrepreneurial's dream. Basically, it's like entrepreneurship 101, how to be a successful entrepreneur and how to never give up because we will always fail. The book Think and Grow Rich is still one of the most purchased, most referenced books in the world of business and finance. And that book was written in 1905, somewhere in there. It was very early on. Well, Napoleon Hill, the author of that book, wrote a book just a few years later after Think and Grow Rich called Outwitting the Devil. I read this about 15 years ago, and I had my daughter, Sierra, read it over the last couple of months. She has put together her own notes, and together we are going to have a dialogue today over some of the basic principles that are even related to our own physical health that are learned by Napoleon Hill and written in the book Outwitting the Devil. I actually believe this is a book that describes our times and what our young people and adults are struggling with more than anything else. So it's an incredible read. And I think Sierra is going to be very excited to talk about what she's learned. Are you excited, Sierra?
I'm very excited. Yeah.
Okay, good. Now tell the audiences everything you want to tell them about you.
About me?
Yep.
I just turned 19. I live with my brother now. I don't have much going on in life. I'm very excited to be on this show. I've done a few radio shows, like you said. And I'm excited to actually have a podcast to be able to talk about this book.
All right, so hold up the book and show the audiences what it looks like.
Outwitting the Devil. Ooh.
All right, tilt it up a little bit, back towards you. There you go. You can see it now. Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. All right. So, Sierra, when I first handed you this book, what did you think the book was going to be about?
Something demonic. I was thinking, really. But yeah, it's an interview with the devil, actually. The whole entire book is Napoleon Hill interviewing the devil.
All right. So to set the context here, if you've never read this book, she is absolutely correct. I told her, I said, this is not a demonic book. This is a book where truly Napoleon Hill actually prayed that he could have a personal interview with Satan himself. He wanted to have an interview with the devil. He had already, in his book, Think and Grow Rich, had interviewed the most wealthy entrepreneurs in America, including Henry Ford, Carnegie, Rockefellers, all of them. When he came to this book, he wanted to know, well, how does Satan really impact our world, and how does he control our minds, influence us to sin, tempt us? I wonder if I can have an interview with him. So he actually starts praying, and Sierra, if she's read every page like she says she has, she will have read how Napoleon Hill literally believed that Satan would show up physically, even sit in his car with him and sit through an interview. And then Napoleon Hill set up some rules, and then Satan had a few of his own rules, but Satan had to tell the truth. So if there was an answer to a question, Napoleon Hill got him to agree, he would 100% answer it no matter what. And no matter how hard it would be for Napoleon Hill to hear the answer, as long as Satan would actually promise that he would stay true to his word and answer every question, he would continue these interviews. Well, the reason why this book isn't as well known as Think and Grow Rich, this book was only published after Napoleon Hill died. His publishers, his family, all of the people that he consulted when he was alive told him that the manuscript of these interviews should never be put into a book while he was alive and that it would hurt his reputation. And it wasn't till his son or grandson, after he died, learned of this manuscript, then had it published. It's probably been out 20 or 30 years now, but Napoleon Hill's been gone a long time. But anyway, Sierra, I told you that Napoleon Hill believed that he had real interviews with Satan. What was your takeaway about that summary when I handed you the book? Now that you've read the book, did you get the same impression that Napoleon Hill really believed this?
I at first didn't believe it at all. I now have a different opinion about it. It's still like a hard topic to talk about or think about. Like, wow, did he really have an interview with the devil himself? Because nobody has said that they have talked to the devil himself. But I kind of believe it because everything that the devil was talking and is saying in this book is going on right now. It's like how you read the Bible. Everything that God is saying is that's going to happen in the Bible is happening today. So it's kind of hard not to believe, or at least somebody told him, because yeah, everything that's being told in this book is crazy. Because every chapter that I'm reading or every page that I'm reading, it's like coming to life more and more. Because you can relate to the topics, you can relate to what he's saying. It's insane because it is happening in today.
Now, he wrote this over 100 years ago, so how does it relate to today's world that you find yourself living in?
The devil talks about schools and how he's trying to attack children and your identity, and that's been our biggest thing today is people's loss of identity and kids, really. And he's talks about attacking kids the entire book.
Well, we'll get into multiple topics of the book, but this actually relates directly to your health. And there's going to be a lot of discussions in here about how Satan answers Napoleon Hill's questions about how he influences our personal, physical, spiritual, and emotional life, even our financial lives. All of it's in there, but he also dives into foods and how it is that Satan uses food to even govern us and control us. And as long as he can actually take our ability, Satan, from having creative logic, common sense, like to be able to make an informed decision on our own, he has to take that away from us. And we'll dive into some of these really cool topics, I think, that we will discuss here today. Sierra has 5 pages of notes, and we're going to try to go through this in a style where, as she introduces a topic from the beginning parts of this book, I'm going to ask her questions, and I want you guys to learn along as I do, as I have a very recent review now of the book I read years ago. But I want these topics. I think these are huge because, for example, if you're paying attention to my Looking for Healing radio show that I do, last Monday I did or a couple Mondays ago, I did an entire show on Generation X, and millennials have the highest suicide rates of all generations ever. And I think once we dive into the principles in this book written over 100 years ago, you're going to start to realize why so many people are so miserable in their lives today is because Satan has figured out many, many ways to deceive us and control us. So there's various methods that he uses to control you and our beliefs. And then our beliefs shape our decisions. Our decisions impact our relationships, our vocations, our finance, all of it. I mean, every aspect of our lives is controlled by our decisions and by our beliefs. So just like Bruce Lipton's book, Biology of Belief, everything we experience in life is based on, number one, first, what do you believe? That's no different than in COVID, right? People that wore masks believed there was something in the air that they were going to be poisoned by. People that stood 6 feet away from other people, you actually believed that there was a virus that would travel 6 feet to infect you. But if you got to 6.5 feet, it couldn't hurt you. You actually fell for it. You believed it. There's some people that believed in the vaccines were the only way to provide immunity. There were some people that believed it would hurt your immune system to get the vaccines. So you didn't. So you lost your jobs, you backed out, you still went to church. Church pastor got in trouble because they kept the doors open during COVID. Everything happens first based off of your beliefs. So when I shared this book with Sierra, it was Napoleon Hill. I told her he believed he had these conversations with the devil. So read the book and let's see what you think is your impressions from the book. So let's first dive into some of your first notes. I wanted to go along her notes that she took, and we've got plenty of time to discuss them all over the next 40 minutes or so. I think you're going to learn stuff that's not only going to help you in your life, it's going to help you communicate things to your grandchildren, children, nieces, nephews, as they find their own struggles in this life. And there's many of them. So mortality provides many of those. So let's dive into some of those. All right, so let's look at your notes. And let's see what your first impressions are you'd like to discuss about the book by Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil.
The first thing that I want to talk about is almost the very first thing whenever Napoleon gets to have this discussion with the devil himself, is the first thing that Satan talks about is fear. And it's a no-brainer, but it's something that it needs to be discussed, is your fear is what attracts Satan to you, and what consumes your mind is fear. And Satan even says, like, in this book, that's how he uses you to get to hell, and how he uses you to drag you down to hell and take control over your mind is your fear. So he even he places fear of hell in churches and schools. And that's why so many people today are scared and are fearful for their life of hell, is because Satan is placing that in the minds of people. And it very much is attracting people to him.
So one of the first tools we're learning about from Satan is the fear he uses to control people. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So fear. All right. So in the last 5 years, have you noticed, Sierra, any attempts using fear to motivate people around the world to do stuff they didn't do before 2020?
Yes, with the fear of COVID and getting sick, and it could kill you. And that's why you need to stay locked up in your house 24/7, can't leave, can't go to church, can't go to school, can't go to work. Yes, he very much in the last 5 years definitely has induced with fear.
And were there people that were afraid of getting sick? Like for real getting sick? Oh man, I'm deadly afraid. I can't leave my house. I can't go to school. I can't go to church. I'm afraid I'm gonna get sick. How many people were even just afraid and paralyzed by fear that they stopped traveling, going to holidays? They wouldn't go visit with family because the governments were telling you they might make you sick. I even heard grandparents being told not to hug their grandchildren unless they get vaccinated. That the children now are super spreaders, is what they called them, of making the elderly sick. So fear was a very, very powerful tool.
Yeah, I think fear is the biggest thing. And it's like, you think about it, and it's like, duh, fear, but no, it really is. Fear is the biggest thing that he talks about. And it is true. The second, or the main topic of this entire book, is drifting. That's my favorite topic in this book, because it's like you have to break it down a lot to understand what drifting is, and it's still complicated to kind of understand. That's why I definitely recommend you to read the book and try to understand it for yourself. I'll try to dive into exactly what it is, but drifting itself, can I read from
All
the
right.
book?
So yes,
Okay,
read
you
away.
got it. You got it.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Drifting, as the devil explains it, is basically losing the power to think. Like, you don't understand for yourself. That's why he uses drugs and alcohol to, like, because if you have a sober mind, you can think for yourself. Not all the time, but majority of the time.
All right. So let's try to set this up. So Napoleon Hill is asking Satan, like, how do you control people? How do you control the minds of people to do bad things, sins, or whatever? In this context, Napoleon Hill is writing in this book, I remember from 20 years ago, he starts talking about, Satan does with Napoleon Hill, that human beings don't really remember or appreciate when God said in the Bible, when you read it, that he made us in his image. You don't really know what that means. And what he is explained to Napoleon Hill by Satan is God is a creator. He creates worlds. He creates life. He creates anything he wants. He is the ultimate creator. And when he made you in his image, you also are a creator. In fact, you can create your own life also. You have free agency to make choices to create any new job you want for yourself going on in the future, any family you want, as many family members as you want. You can travel the world wherever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can have whatever life you want. Is the greatest gift Satan conveys to Napoleon Hill that he gave to his children. Now, in order to control God's children, who he knows have been infused with these creator abilities to create anything he wants in his own mind, to create whatever reality of life that he wants, have whatever job he wants, Napoleon Hill asked Satan, how do you get people to forget that they have the ability to choose whatever life they want? How do you take that from them? Because it appears so many people are just walking through life. They hate their jobs. They divorce their wives. They separate from their families. I mean, there's just all this chaos. They turn to drugs, alcohol. How do people lose this faith in the ability to create whatever life they want? And I think this is when, as Sierra is outlining, Satan tells Napoleon Hill the greatest tool he uses to confine you to misery, temptation, and loss and grief is to cause men to drift. And this term drift is a tool he uses throughout the book to explain how he controls all of humanity on earth. And it's primarily through this tool he uses called drifting. Am I right?
Yes, and drifting is basically any habit which causes a person to procrastinate and to put like reaching a definite decision or a goal.
Oh, well, let's talk about that. All right. So, can we think about anything, Sierra? Let's throw out some ideas. What are some common things that would be distractions that would make a human being procrastinate? Anything. All right. Throw out a few.
Social media,
Social media. Hey, that's a big one.
friends, community, family, even.
How about binge
sports.
watching Netflix?
100%.
Yeah. On a weekend? I'm not going to go engage at church. I'm just going to watch all of this one show that has like 10 seasons in the next 3 days. Okay. Anything else?
I would say social media is the biggest thing, especially because you can, it's in the form of phone, it's in your pocket, you can pull it out whenever.
You ever watch people walking around and they don't even look up from where they're walking? They're just
Yep.
walking through the mall. They're walking through a hike in a nature trail. They don't even look up. They're on their phone everywhere they go. So I think phones, cell phones, media can be a huge distraction that causes men and women to drift. However, these are not the two primary tools that the devil writes in this, or Napoleon Hill writes in this book, the devil told him. All right, so remember, we're quoting Napoleon Hill. This wasn't our interview with Satan. This was Napoleon Hill's interview with the devil. What were the two primary tools that Satan says he created through men to cause men and women on this world to drift?
The first one was, I forgot how to say it. Rhythmic.
Harmonic.
What is it?
Harmonic rhythm.
I forget.
Well, I can remind you. All right, so there's two primary tools, physical tools that he says he put on this earth to cause men to drift. Okay, so it was not harmonic rhythm that I just stated. All right, so these are the two physical tools all of you would be aware of. I remember from the book, and maybe Sierra can correct me if she's just recently learned something I have forgotten. But the two primary tools I remember learning from Napoleon Hill was Satan says, the devil says to Napoleon Hill, I created two things that are the most useful tools at creating the most men and women in the world to drift and forget who they are and what their capabilities are to create the life they want. And that was public schools and churches. Sorry, religion is what he said. Religion and right? Or was it churches?
Churches.
It was churches. She's correcting me. All right. So churches and public schools. All right. So when I read that, I remember thinking, wow, Satan was behind all that too. Okay. I have actually had massive amounts of concern since I was very young. I'm talking 8, 9 years old. I would start telling my parents I have a problem with the public school systems. And I really did. I could tell that what they were doing was making people memorize facts and stuff. You weren't actually learning anything. You're learning how to memorize and pass a test. And I always thought it was ridiculous. You're going to go through all 12 years of public school. Then you're going to go off to university studies. And then you're going to get a diploma. And then you're going to graduate. And then you're going to get these degrees. And then you're going to get hired by a company. And guess what the first thing every company is going to do with you? Now that you've had all this education for 20 years. What are you going to do? Now the company has to put you through months of training Seriously? So you know your job? Why don't we just skip all the school bull crap and just go learn how to do the trade? How about that? So for me, I always thought it was ridiculous that the majority of human beings don't need a physical education to do any of their jobs. They don't need a public school system curriculum. They don't need university studies and diplomas. They really just would need primarily a trade university, maybe, or trade college where they can learn a trade, plumbing, concrete work, construction, whatever. You don't need all the schooling. However, reading the book, I have to tell you, the schools, churches discussion when Satan says these are my most effective tools at causing men and women to drift to where he now can control you. It was very obvious to me that these were truths I had already accepted in my own life as realities. So to read it decades later, it wasn't that far fetched. It was just odd to hear Napoleon Hill say Satan told him that. Were you shocked by that, Sierra?
Yeah, yeah, I was kind of shocked. I was a little bit shocked. It's kind of, in my mind, kind of obvious with the school part. It was shocked me about churches because I did find a church when I did read this. I did find a church that I thought, which I love. I love my church, but how the devil explains it in the book on why he needs the church and why he needs school, it makes it very obvious to his plans. And because Napoleon asks the devil in the book, like, why haven't you destroyed churches? If you can do all this, why don't you destroy churches? And he says that he needs the churches to induce the fear of hell and induce the fear of the devil. And that's how, like I explained earlier, that's how he takes you and that's how he grabs you. And with schools, that's how he induces you into drifting because when you're at school, you can't think for yourself. You're getting told what to think, you're getting told what to learn and what you're going to be. You don't get to think for yourself. And he uses schools especially for drifting.
Amen. What's your next notes on there?
He also uses marriage as one of his ways of drifting because I just wanted to go attack that because that's why a lot of marriages do fail is because Satan uses you to go against each other in a marriage and a relationship, and that's why a lot of them fail is because he just
Well,
he speaks through you.
what's your notes on it? I'd love to read that. I actually don't remember that from the book.
Yeah, he says, I quoted him. He says, I keep them so busy finding fault with one another that they never have time to do anything else long enough to break the habit of drifting.
Oh my goodness. Sounds like most marriages on earth find ways to bicker and complain, whether it's about toothpaste being squeezed from the bottom or the top or toilet bowl, toilet rolls being flipped upside down or underneath, anything petty that God or not God, but Satan can keep people at odds with each other. It helps those men and women to drift because they are now drawn into a state of contention and finding fault with somebody else versus being free of mind to go create mentally what world you want, what marriage you want, what family you want, what life you want. So this is an incredible learning thing for me. Great. All right. What's next?
I want you to help me with this one. It's the topic of propaganda.
Okay.
And we were talking about this earlier, and it's how he uses um propaganda to get into our government and into our health and our drugs. And he started an epidemic with propaganda, and he talks a lot about propaganda.
So Satan's got another favorite tool called propaganda. So here's some propaganda for you. So an example of propaganda would be this. Scientists in April of 2020 figured out that smokers weren't being affected by COVID. So they published a paper and asked governments around the world to help them fund research studies using nicotine agents like gum, patches, pouches you can suck onto, anything with nicotine to help us stop the pandemic. Well, instead, when the governments of the world knew that these scientists figured out that nicotine was a vaccine for COVID, all naturally, propaganda efforts had to be created. So, what was the propaganda? They told Anthony Fauci to go on the Jimmy Fallon show, the NBC Today, the Good Morning America show. Go on there and tell the world, Dateline, 2020, you name it, everywhere. Go and tell the world a big lie and keep telling that lie often because people will eventually believe it. That's the truth about propaganda. One lie on top of another. The propaganda in this scenario is all governments around the world and scientists and public people, public servants, started lying to the whole world saying that smokers were the most hospitalized with COVID, died the most from complications from COVID, and the truth was just the opposite. They use this propaganda machine to lie to you, to get you to do something different than what you would have done if you heard the truth. So the truth was, if you smoke currently, you won't get COVID. Your risk for getting COVID goes down. The governments around the world and media decided to propagandize a lie, and that was smokers are getting COVID and dying more than anybody else. There's no better time than now to quit smoking, America, is what Dr. Anthony Fauci said for the last 4 years. And the truth is, there was no better time for people to pick up cigarettes than during COVID to prevent COVID from ever happening. They would have never been put on remdesivir. They would have never gotten COVID and would never thought to get a vaccine. So the propaganda was, we're going to lie to you to convince you there's a bat virus in the air. You're going to be scared. We're going to tell you a whole bunch of people died in the hospital from COVID when in fact they died from remdesivir. And you are going to volunteer yourself in a Home Depot parking lot to get a COVID-19 vaccine that's never been tested true or effective or safe. So that is propaganda. Tell a lie big enough, often enough, and people will eventually believe the lies. And Satan loves that one.
He does love that one. It's a huge one for him. He mainly talks, as you get more further into the book, he really talks about his attack on children, which I know we're like flipping a switch here, but like it's a huge thing with children. And even like God is always talking about in the Bible about he wants the youth and he needs the youth and he loves kids. The devil tries to attack you, especially he even says like he tries to attack you before you gain consciousness, like as a kid, before you start like imitating your parents and your teachers and your leaders, like your church pastors, before you start imitating the actions of all these adults. He will attack your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, and that's how he will start getting that fear from you. See, fear is a huge thing. He loves inducing fear in people, and that's how he attacks you, and that's how he grabs you. And he even lists off, because Napoleon, he told him, you need to be honest and you need to answer all of my questions. The devil threatens Napoleon a bunch of times in the book, threatening with his life, his career if he publishes it. But the devil lists about like 4 ways which you can protect your children. Now, he lists 4 pages worth of ways that you can protect your children, which is a lot. And we can't really get through all of them today. Do you want to read some of them?
Yeah, I would like to hear some of these. All right. So ways to protect your children from drifting.
Yeah. So he also talks about definite and like being definite with yourself. And yeah, he says to teach your children to be definite in all things, beginning with the choice of a definite major purpose in life. So it's like whenever he talks about self-definiteness and self-discipline and all that, but he wants you to be certain. And the moment that you create a plan in your life and you go off course of it, or you just demolish it and don't want to do that, that's when he attacks you. He does it all. It happens all the time in life. Whenever you create a plan in your mind that you're going to do something and then you immediately back out of it. Like I know I've made a lot of plans for my life and have backed out of it. That's when the devil will attack you.
Now, I want to speak to this real quick. All right. So in school, you learn in this book that Satan says, the devil says, that schools are one of his greatest tools for causing drifting. And in the book, he talks about how he helped combine with the Rockefellers and others to build a public school system. And then the public school system in those board meetings where they discussed creating a public education system in America, that the powers that were going to create it were going to use public schools to indoctrinate children to believe that they can only make money by going to school, getting a certificate or a diploma eventually that would be their allowance to get hired at any of those people's companies who were building the American education system. So whatever companies they owned, they wanted everyone in America to work for them to make them more money as employees. When the truth is, as Satan says in here, every human being on earth has been given a mind of creativity to create any vocation or job or career they want. You do not have to go work for anybody as an employee. Every single one of you are individually like little creators, not like a god. You just have been given the ability to create whatever life you want. Schooling, including undergraduate and graduate educations, were totally created to convince you that you have to pay them for their education, pay them for your certificate and diploma, so you can eventually get a job working for the same people and making them more money in their lives. This is why 90% of all people working in America report they hate their jobs, but feel like they have to do it just for a paycheck. They have conditioned you to believe you have to have a diploma in education to be able to get a job, to be able to get paid. And that is not true. You were put on this earth to have whatever life you want and work whatever life you want. The people you will find in life who are the happiest typically are those who created their own careers, who are free to create their own schedules, to be creative, to come up with what they want to offer in the way of services or products to people around the world. This is the damage done by drifting. And he says schools, churches are his favorite tools. All right, well, here we go. You just said that children, one of the things that they want to do, Satan always wants to do, is make sure he can get to your children's mind early before they reach consciousness. And one of the ages they most often reference when children finally are able to grasp their independent thinking processes is by the age of 8 years old, which is why indoctrination from a very young age, make sure your children are being born in churches and going to churches every day so they understand the church indoctrinations. Make sure you put them in pre-K, nursery, get them ready for school and education very young, get them conditioned to believe the things we want you to believe. And they start early on, man. How many? Oh my goodness. I mean, even think about Halloween in general. What are you going to be for Halloween? I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a judge. I'm going to be whatever, right? They are conditioning you very young that you are going to work in a system and make money for people in this world and forget that you could create whatever life you wanted. All right, let's dive into the children. Go ahead.
All right. So another one that I wanted to say on it was teach children that their only real limitations are those which they set up or permit others to establish in their own mind. This last one dives into another thing that the devil talks about. He wants us to teach children. He doesn't want us to do this. He's giving us advice. He wants us to teach children what to eat, how much to eat, and what is the relationship between proper eating and sound health. Now, that is a big thing that he talks about in this book, towards the end at least, is he uses food as a weapon against your own body, your own mind, and your own self. He uses food, and it might seem small because, it's food, you're just eating whatever. But as time goes on, if you're overeating, if you're just constantly eating unhealthy things that weren't put on this earth for us to eat, if you're constantly eating them, you're destroying your health and your physical health, and then it gets to your mental and emotional state. And that's what he talks about is the 3 things that destroy self-discipline. It's the desire for food, desire for expression of sex, and desire for expressing loosely unorganized opinions. That third one kind of sounds complicated, but it's just for whenever.
Wait, repeat it though. You did it really fast.
Desire for expressing loosely unorganized opinions or expressing uninvited opinions. So it's whenever you make a plan for yourself and you're going to do this and that, and you're just telling everybody that this is your plan and you're going to do this. I used to struggle with this a lot and telling everybody that I was going to do this and be this, and it never really happened because you get the outside opinions of other people because you're already set your plan out for life and you're telling everybody about it. And you want everybody to know that you're this cool, amazing person and you can do all this and that. And then you're getting the opinions of other people, uninvited opinions that you don't need, you don't want, and it destroys your sense of self, which he talks about as well. And he loves destroying senses of self. He has people put on this earth. He doesn't have people put on this earth, but he gets into the minds of people on this earth and uses them as his little toys to get to people. And I could say that a lot with the people that are in our government right now, is he's using them. Can't say for sure but he's definitely using people as his little toys to get around. I just watched a movie. It's the most demonic movie you'll ever watch. Don't watch it. But it's totally telling, literally after finishing this book, it was so crazy. This dude is literally working for the devil, and he's saying "Hail Satan" in the entire movie, and it's all about Satan and worshiping Satan. It shouldn't have even been a movie. You could tell that that's all they wanted to portray in the movie, was worshiping Satan and worshiping the devil. It was crazy.
And this is a movie out now, right? Very current.
It just came out.
Okay.
It was insane. I can't believe I watched it. Don't watch it. It was insane.
All right. So she is seeing, so Sierra is seeing now what she's reading in a book from 100 years ago is now being portrayed in very common Hollywood movies and cinemas all over the country. And she just walked into one here in Dallas this last week and was horrified by what she watched. But it was exactly what is laid out in this book, that there are individuals who serve Satan, help him do his bidding on this earth and keep people distracted and drifting. And that's what they portray in this film. Let's go back to those 3 things, though. You mentioned And for the Dr. Ardis Show, everybody knows that I'm usually talking on health topics and how to keep the human body healthy. So you mentioned earlier today when we were talking about doing this show, on completion of you reading this book and making your notes, you mentioned that God talks about in the Bible that our body is a temple, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's dive into these 3 basic principles you just mentioned in reference. Let's do them again. What was the first one you said?
The desire for food.
The desire for food. All right. So what do they call that? If you do excess eating of food, what is that referenced as in the book?
It's called gluttony. And
Gluttony.
it's referenced in the Bible as well. So it's a huge thing for generations that's been talked about.
So do you think right now in America and around the world that there is a lot of gluttony going on? Is there a lot of addictions to food?
Yes, I also think it's the additives that are getting put into our food. But yes, there's a lot of addiction to food. I know people that are obsessed with food. I know people that were obsessed with food and that fixed their relationship with it. But so many people, especially in our world right now, are addicted to food. And they think that it's better than being addicted to drugs and alcohol, but it's not.
Nope. And in fact, you learned in this book that it's not just people are out there trying to take advantage of people's physical health by making them sick with food, making them addicted to buying their foods, and then them profiting off of that stuff. Satan is referencing in this book over 100 years ago to Napoleon Hill, the devil himself, that he uses food to destroy the minds, hearts, and motivations and ambitions of men and women, right? So he's destroying all of their hopes and dreams and ambitions and creativity. I mean, how many really obese people are in this world that physically can't even work? I mean, they couldn't even go out and do anything if they wanted to. How about people who are paralyzed with addictions to food? I mean, these additives, like you just mentioned, Sierra, are a huge deal. So sugar addictions, aspartame, MSG, these are all additives to foods that are addictive. And then there are foods that have chemicals added to them, like polysorbates, that are known to cause autoimmunity and cancers. And if an individual keeps eating those foods, they will develop those diseases. And then those individuals very often have been conditioned to join support groups for their condition. And now they're going to be spending drifting periods of every week of their life participating in these support groups. And it all has to go back to their selections of food and drink. And Satan loves these tools and influencing people with addictions to food big time. And of course, it was even stated in the Bible that it was a sin. Gluttony was a sin, right? To overeat beyond what our natural requirements are for food. Well, I think a lot of people in the world have access to too much food, are addicted to food, and aren't eating nature's provided food that would keep your nature's provided body that God gave you healthy as possible. All right, what was number 2?
Number 2 was before we get onto the second one, can I add on to the desire?
I would love it.
Okay, so when I was talking about like preservatives and additives that are in our food today, it's a lot in America. He states in this book that he hates America. Ever since the Declaration of Independence was signed, he hates America, which is crazy. But you can see it because you compare our food to other countries' food. And tell me why, like, there's so many additives to our food and colorings and unnecessary things to our food that aren't in other countries. And you wonder why America has so many problems with food addicts and other countries don't. You don't really hear or see. Bro, you'll ask somebody like in a different country, like, what's the first word that you think of whenever you come to America? A lot of them will say the word obese. And it's because it's what's getting put into our food. And that's why I know that the devil uses people as his little puppets to go around, because this stuff doesn't just come into our food. It's people adding them to our food. And yeah, whenever it said that he hates America.
So, Sierra, if I asked you, whether answered in the book or not, what would be the food you think Satan doesn't want us eating that would help preserve our common sense, logic, and strong mental acuity?
Anything that comes from the earth. Honey, potatoes, carrots, meat, like, no hate to vegetarians, but God put meat on here for a reason. But all the food that God puts on this earth, he wants us to avoid. That's why there's so much cereal. Like, that's why everybody, those commercials that cereal is a part of a complete breakfast, but they show every natural thing. Like, they show oranges, fruit, that's the complete breakfast, not the
Propaganda. That's an
Propaganda.
example of propaganda.
That's
This is what normal food looks like. You eat it in a bowl with cow's milk, and it's wheat processed into a little sugary coated powdered item.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, very good. Any other thoughts on the food aspect?
No, it
Avoid
covers itself.
alcohol, avoid sugar as much as possible, and
Yes.
refined grains.
Yes.
And eat food without labels. How
And
about that?
even the fake sugar that they're putting in, like, you know, especially athletes or people who work out like myself, we try to find the things that are high in protein, but they're like sugar free or 1 gram of sugar. But then you look at it and it's like 20 grams of like fake sugar. Fake sugar is worse than cane sugar. I would just avoid that entirely too.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right,
What I
dive into
gotta
number
say.
2.
Okay, number 2 is the desire for expression of sex. I feel like that
Okay.
explains a lot with itself, because whenever you're going out and he uses this as, he talks about men's desire for
He being
sex.
Satan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Satan talks about like flattering and how he uses men to like go and flatter women and seduce women. He talks about that a lot, and he uses that for the desire of for expression of sex. That also takes away your identity of self, because if that's all you're craving, that's all you're looking for,
I think sex in general is a very powerful tool because we by nature are drawn to continue our species, right? You're attracted to females if you're a male, women to men, and this is a powerful tool that he could use to keep you distracted from your ultimate creativity and freedom of mind efforts, like what it is you're on this earth to do. There are many, many people I think that are huge sex addicts, porn addicts and the like, and others who the majority of their lives are being robbed from them with the control that has been used of the desire around sex. And I think this is why in entertainment, this is why in music, this is why in movies. As soon as you actually started talking, I started picturing The Rock in the Jumanji movies with his smoldering thing. Smoldering, smoldering. The man's trying to smolder the female, right? And attract the female. Anyway, I think sex is a huge distraction for many, and destroys many marriages, obviously, many relationships. And I think Satan enjoys people not expanding the way God designed us to. And
yes.
Anything that takes us away from our creative abilities and capabilities. I think sex and food are 2 huge ones. And what was the third one again? I love this one.
Yes, the third one is the desire for expressing loosely unorganized opinions or uninvited opinions.
So I want to talk about this. All right. So this is loosely throwing out opinions which aren't substantiated and to have no organization to them. So this might be a little odd to you to hear, but I want to make sure this is clear, because this is actually the second book in which Napoleon Hill writes about this topic, about opinions. In the first book he wrote, called Think and Grow Rich, How You Think is How You Will Create Wealth. The very last chapter, he says, I never asked any of the people I interviewed for this book who are the wealthiest men in America. I did not ask them about this last thing I want to discuss, but there is a very common theme with all of these most successful, wealthy people I've interviewed for this book called Think and Grow Rich. And I feel I need to devote an entire chapter to it. He said every single one of these men had the exact same personality trait, and he recognized it while visiting with them physically to do their interviews for his book. He said they all share this one common thing. None of them will offer an opinion unless they're asked for one. And I remember reading that at first, and I was like, wait a minute. These most successful human beings that this guy interviews, Henry Ford, Carnegie, all of them, they all have this very similar trait, that they just listen to people and they don't just throw their opinions at people flippantly. But oh my goodness, what kind of world do we live in now, Sierra? Opinions about everything are being thrown at everybody all the time through radio, social media, TikTok, Facebook. Everybody's opinions that have never been asked for are constantly being thrown at people. I mean, have you ever seen a comment section of a post ever? These are unorganized, unasked for opinions. They're just loosely being thrown out. So I would like to say this to the audience. There are many people you know who you would consider are gossipers. They just like throwing out other people's crap to the wind. They don't know where it lands. They don't even care how it impacts the people they're talking about. But all of us, well, we know people who throw out their opinions when they're not asked. And the truth is, the most successful people on this earth, it has been found by those who interview the most successful people on earth, that the most successful people on earth have a very common personality trait. They do not give opinions unless a person asks the person for an opinion. And I think this is something that all of us should strive for as our own character. We should try to be a person who simply listens to people without giving them your unorganized, loose opinions. And far too often we do that, and it hurts us. It hurts you. It hurts everybody that is involved in these kinds of rumors or gossips. But that's what I think he's talking about. It just destroys humanity when these rumors are being thrown around that can be viewed as opinions. So that's why I actually do, in every one of my shows, I do a show and tell. I actually say, this is my show and tell. I'm actually going to tell you what my opinion is, then I'm going to show you why it is I have that opinion. So this is why it is I designed the Dr. Ardis show the way it is. So did that help you a little bit with the definition there?
Explain,
and does it
yeah.
make sense to you why Satan would like this as a very powerful tool?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It destroys your sense of self, as he explains in the book as well.
All right. So we have like 6 minutes left to continue talking, but I want you to tell the audiences, what age group of people would you recommend read this book, Outwitting the Devil?
I would definitely say a lot of parents. Definitely parents. But even if you're my age, I don't really know if it
Is there an
would you say
age
there's a
group you would say that people should avoid it, or do you think everybody should read it?
I think everybody should read it. It talks about children, it talks about men, it talks about older. He talks about every age group. I wouldn't just specify it to one age group. But I would definitely recommend, if you have a kid, especially a younger kid, or if you're expecting a kid, I would definitely recommend reading it so that you can help them grow, because these are like, he's telling you like lessons that you didn't even think that you could share or teach with your children. So I would definitely recommend, if you're a parent, to read this. But I think everybody should read this. I found it very interesting. We didn't even discuss half of what he read in there. Or wrote in there. And I definitely would recommend reading it. It's a very interesting, very crazy book.
All right. So let's go through some more of your notes. I think you've got some more.
I have one last thing that I kind of want to pick apart a little bit, but he talks about, the very last thing really is hypnotic rhythm, which I tried. It's like, it's kind of hard to comprehend, but he explains that the law of hypnotic
So
rhythm,
he being Satan, though.
Satan,
Okay.
Satan
Okay.
explains the law of hypnotic rhythm is the law of compensation. It's the power which nature balances negative and positive forces throughout the universe in all forms of energy, all forms of matter, and all forms of human relationships. Satan himself also believes that life could not exist without him, because he explains God in the book, but he says the word God maybe once, but he explains God as his opposition, and he says that life could not exist without a positive and a negative balance. And he explains it like it's an electron. You can't have an electron without positive and negative. So he believes that life could not exist without him. So he talks about hypnotic rhythm a lot and what can destroy it, and what it can't destroy hypnotic rhythm, but how it can impact you, I guess.
So let me ask you. So, for example, there's this circle image you'll see from Asia. Everybody knows it's an Asian symbol. They call it yin and yang, right? You'll see the white
Yin
and the
and
black
yang.
thing, yin and yang, yin and yang. Actually, everyone in America calls it yang.
Oh.
It's actually yin and yang. It's really quite funny. As an acupuncturist, I had to be corrected growing through school for that with my Chinese and Asian instructors. But yin and yang is the balance of life. So I'm going to assume that Satan also is acknowledging that he himself cannot alter the fact that there is balance to the universe and to life. There's always light. Therefore, there's always darkness. You can't even have light without darkness. You can't have an electron without a proton. So everything's positive and negative. There's always balance. Now, I will say this, and I don't even know if my daughter's even heard this before, but I actually visited with a guy named Dr. John DeMartini about 12 years ago. And I went through a course of his called The Breakthrough. And in this breakthrough course, which was just a 2 or 3 day course, he actually stated in that course that there's nothing actually wrong that any human being can do. You just do stuff. And for everything you do, there are equal amounts of positive consequences and negative consequences. To every choice you make, to every decision you make, they are always equal. There is never a time where there is more pros than cons. There's always just as many positives as there is negatives. And then we as human beings are left to figure out, where are we going to focus our attention on after this thing happens or this choice is made? Do we only focus on the pros, or do we only focus on the cons? Because your behavior, your actions, the way you talk, the way you interact with people will be based on whether or not you see the things that happened as a result of the result of the choice as being positive. If you saw them as negative, you're going to be grumpy, you're going to be negative, you're going to be upset and angry and depressed and frustrated, and nobody's going to want to be around you. You've met those people too in your life who walk around with a stink in their voice and on their face that just looks like life just sucks for them and everything in life sucks for them. And then you find people that just can't stop smiling. You think, oh my God, of course everything great happens for them. Look at them smiling their way through life. No. Every human being has the opportunity to choose where are they going to focus their attention on in every aspect of our lives. It doesn't matter what it is. There's going to be equal amounts of positive and negative all the time. The universe just operates that way. Does that make sense to you, Sierra?
Yeah, it does make sense. You've talked about it a few times with me, but
I try to have these conversations with my kids all the time, but yeah, you never know what you remember you said to all of them. There's 5 of them, so you don't really know what you said. All right, Sierra, any other thoughts with Outwitting the Devil? Hold up the book one more time. We got like a minute left. Tell them where they can get it. You can get it online. Go find it. She didn't even buy it. I gave it to her off my bookshelf. All right, so Napoleon Hill, Outwitting the Devil. What's the subtitle underneath the title? Read it out loud.
The Secret to Freedom and Success.
Oh, look at that summary. All right. So if you, as we discuss all the time, if you want freedom from your symptoms, if you want freedom from your disease, he didn't say in the subtitle what you're going to have freedom from. But if you want freedom in healing, freedom from symptoms and disease and overweight or gluttony, you name it, you've got to grasp these concepts and realize that someone's causing you to drift and you're actually following their instruction, or you're following for their bribery. So don't fall for that anymore. All right. So get the book. It'll be empowering for you. I believe it will provide value and a lot of awareness of what's going on in the world. And then things don't seem so mysterious and you don't feel as lost. And that's the one thing I wanted for my kids and my family. All of us at times feel like we're lost and that we just can't navigate this crazy, insane world we live in. And the truth is there are powers behind what you are experiencing. And you just need to understand this is how life occurs. And the more you learn, the more it is easier to manage the life that we experience around us that we are being programmed to experience. All right, Sierra, final words. Say goodbye to the audiences.
Thank you for watching our show. I don't know, but thank you for letting me talk about this, because I think it's something that really needs to be out there, because I had no idea that this book was even written until a few months ago. I think everybody watching this should read it, get it, own it. It can help you a lot.
Amen.
Amen.
And if you didn't see Sierra actually presented at the Healing for the Ages 2.0 conference, so if you didn't see it live or not scheduled to see it live, or you're seeing this after, go get the replays and watch your presentation on suicide, ideations, rates, causes, and antidotes in young people. It actually fits right in line with what she read in this book recently, with what she's presenting at the healingfortheages.com conference. Her and her brother Braden, Dr. Henry Ely's son Sol, and Dr. Jana Schmidt's sons, Jamie and Ellis. All right, I'm Dr. Ardis. This is the Dr. Ardis Show. God bless you. We hope this was as enlightening and inspiring to you as it is for me. And remember, life's incredible.
Life is amazing.
Bring it on. All right, Dr. Ardis Show is out. We will see you next week. God bless you. Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Ardis, and I am so excited it is finally time to let you know that registration for the Healing for the Ages 2.0, dates September 12th, 13th, and 14th in Dallas, Texas, are now available. I need to let you know, though, there really truly is only 500 seats in person at this conference, so those are going to sell out fast. I would really love to see you there. So hurry up and get your tickets. I am so excited to have you there. Come join me, Dr. Ardis, Dr. Henry Ely, Dr. Ed Group, and Dr. Jana Schmidt for another thrilling Celebration of Solutions event, September 12th, 13th, and 14th in Dallas, Texas. We can't wait to see you there.